I never imagined that fateful day would begin with a lukewarm cappuccino and the averted eyes of people who once called me Sister Ava. The 42nd floor conference room at Stratostech gleamed in the morning sunlight pouring through the floor-to-ceiling glass walls. I sat at the head of the table where I'd sat for 6 years, my hand resting on my stomach, as if shielding the most precious thing in my life. A tiny being just 11 weeks old. The company's CEO and my husband, Brandon Cole, rose from his ash-gray leather chair. His voice was icy. "Ava Cole, your employment at Stratostech is terminated, effective immediately." I thought I'd misheard, but the confused looks from the board members and the synchronized rustling of documents confirmed what I couldn't believe. I stood, my palms clenched. "Brandon, I'm pregnant." He let out a low laugh. A cold, mocking chuckle echoed across the quiet room. "What a coincidence, isn't it?" Then he gestured toward the 2 security guards waiting by the door. No sympathetic glances, no explanations from anyone. In that moment, I wasn't sure what stung more, being fired in front of a room full of executives, or watching my husband look at me like a stranger without value. I searched the room for some kind of anchor, but all I saw was Jessica Rhodes, Brandon's executive assistant, seated close beside him, gently stroking her flowing blonde curls and smiling as if enjoying a perfectly staged play. She stood with surprising confidence. "Everyone, please look at the screen." With a single press of her remote, she projected a colorful chart and financial breakdown. Under Ava Cole's leadership, the operations division has declined in performance for 3 consecutive quarters. Brandon asked me to audit all the data, and the result? She glanced at me, smirking. "Shows clear evidence of serious data manipulation." I was speechless. "Those numbers are wrong. I submitted the original reports just 2 days ago. The data was completely different." Brandon cut in, sliding a folder across the table toward me. "We checked your computer. There's evidence showing you altered files to hide your department's decline." I didn't even look at the folder. I knew the truth. And I knew whoever tampered with that data. It wasn't me. I turned toward Thomas Greer, Stratostech's largest investor, someone who had trusted my strategic mind for over 8 years. "Thomas, you know I'd never do that." He looked down. He couldn't meet my eyes. "The board has voted, Ava," Brandon said, emotionless. "You no longer align with Stratostech's vision. Truthfully, you've been a liability for a while." A strange coldness settled over me. Each second that passed revealed the shape of a calculated strategy. A purge, planned, rehearsed, complete with a replacement fake evidence, and the silent consent of the entire board. "Brandon, we need to talk in private. There are things the board doesn't know." He shook his head without hesitation. "Jessica's been managing your work for months now. Everything's been running smoothly. The board just confirmed her as the new official COO." Jessica stepped forward, holding out her hand. "Please surrender your access card and company laptop. It's company policy for departing senior executives." I removed my badge from around my neck, unplugged my charger, and placed everything on the table. Jessica leaned in and whispered sweetly, "He never loved you. You were just a tool, until someone better came along." As the conference room doors opened and the guards stepped in, I realized the game had started, and I had no intention of losing. I exited the ground floor elevator, my heels clicking sharply on the granite floor like a countdown clock. No one in the lobby dared look at me. The same coworkers who once called me the operations queen now kept their eyes glued to screens or hurried past, avoiding any contact. The guards politely escorted me to my car. Before I shut the door, one of them spoke. "Good luck, Miss Ava." I turned back with a faint smile. "Thanks, I won't be needing luck." Once the door slammed shut, the silence hit me. My belly gave a small pang, as if to remind me, I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I didn't cry. The pain had passed beyond tears. What remained was a chilling clarity, and a plan, just beginning to form. I didn't drive home. I took a different route, to the only place Brandon had never been. An 18th floor apartment at Edgeview Complex I'd used for overnight work sessions for years. No ties, no trace, no link to Stratostech. Remember. Inside the dim room, I powered up my private computer system, completely separate from anything company issued. While it booted, I opened a hidden wall panel concealing a locked file cabinet. I pulled out a thick black binder labeled Core IP-Ava Grace Morgan. Inside was everything. Initial schematics, coding journals, emails with the patent office, and, most important, the official patent filing for the NovaSync algorithm under my maiden name, Ava Grace Morgan, submitted before Stratos Tech even existed. That algorithm had powered the data system Brandon used to attract his first investors. I remembered what he once told me, back when we worked out of a cramped Austin rental. "You're the brain, I'm the mouth, we'll conquer the world together." Now it was clear. When the brain stopped being convenient, he dumped it like a broken update. My private phone buzzed, an encrypted message. "Everything's playing out as you predicted. I'm still watching from inside. Kate." I knew exactly who Kay was. One of the lead engineers I'd mentored, still embedded on the development team. Only 3 people I trusted completely. Kay was one of them. I replied, "Start collecting system logs. Focus on admin account access from Jessica's ID." Leaning back, I gently touched my belly. They thought I'd disappear quietly, but I don't play by their rules. I wrote the code their empire runs on. At that moment, an anonymous email arrived in my backup inbox. Subject: Brandon is fast-tracking the sale of Stratos Tech. Body: Global Core has received the acquisition proposal. Public announcement expected within 48 hours. I clenched my jaw. Not only had they kicked me out, they were planning to sell the entire system, including my algorithm, to an international conglomerate. Brandon thought if he moved fast enough, I wouldn't catch up. But he forgot one thing: I never needed time to strike back, just a good reason. Now I had everything. On screen, download complete, standalone backup ready for deployment. I texted my personal attorney, an old Stanford friend, an IP law specialist. Initiate emergency injunction filing. All docs are uploaded to the private cloud. Request a private hearing within 24 hours. Then I opened a file labeled Contingency Protocol. The screen lit up with documents, videos, and server logs, evidence of Jessica's data tampering and unauthorized access stretching back months. Brandon had already lost, he just didn't know it yet, and Jessica, the woman who whispered, "You're only useful until you're not," was about to learn what expired really means. I leaned back, no longer angry, just resolute. In the quiet of my 18th floor sanctuary, I whispered, "The game's on, Brandon, and this time, I write the rules." I turned on the desk lamp, golden light casting long shadows over the documents, arranged like a short-term maze, but one with perfect logic. Each folder clearly labeled: Patent, Ava G. Morgan, NovaSync Development Timeline, Licensing Agreements, Stratos Tech. Every word a puzzle piece for the courtroom showdown. My encryption software finished syncing with the private server in Boston, my server. I unlocked my phone and dialed. "Caroline, Phase 1 begins." Caroline Foster, my IP lawyer and best friend from college, answered with her usual calm voice. "It's time. They're trying to sell the entire system to Global Core within 48 hours. NovaSync is at the center of it. If that deal goes through, they won't just steal my work. They'll validate it with a contract worth hundreds of millions. I'll file the emergency injunction first thing tomorrow, Ava. But I need one more thing. Proof that Brandon knew the patent was under your maiden name." I nodded as if she were in the room. I saved every email from when I first sent him NovaSync's prototype. I've got the 2016 receipt from the patent office too, back when I signed as Ava Grace Morgan. Perfect. I'll prepare the petition and request a temporary restraining order. We'll include evidence of IP infringement, especially since they knew and still used it. Caroline, one more thing. I need a hearing within 24 hours. That depends on the judge, but I'll call in a favor with Judge Everett's office. He used to be my professor at Yale. I exhaled, feeling a flicker of relief for the first time in hours. "If you can just buy me 48 hours, Caroline, I'll take care of the rest. And Ava, be careful. Brandon won't just sit back and let this slip away." I never expected him to. After the call, I opened my safe and pulled out an external hard drive. Inside it was the original, unedited NovaSync code. Handwritten and scanned back when I was still working out of my mother's garage. Short, powerful lines of logic that helped Stratos Tech rise from a startup to a tech unicorn in just 4 years. Brandon used to proudly boast to investors that the algorithm was so brilliant even AI couldn't predict its logic. And he was right, because it was built on instinct. An obsession with precision, and countless sleepless nights, while Brandon was off networking at parties. My phone buzzed again. A message from Kay. Jessica just logged into the main system, through the secondary server. She's copying the core data. I gripped the phone tightly. They knew I had evidence, and now they were trying to erase it, or worse, rewrite a new version to strip my claim. I sent an urgent command to the independent security team I'd hired last month, just in case things went south. The message was clear. Initiate full NovaSync system backup. Store on 3 separate encrypted servers. Prioritize original code, development logs, and access credentials. 10 minutes later, the confirmation came in. Success. All data has been backed up and frozen, cannot be modified without original key from Ava Grace Morgan. I closed my laptop and stood, staring out the window, where the lights of Austin still sparkled against the night sky. Every light was a story, and I was rewriting mine. Brandon thought he was in control. He thought I was weak, vulnerable to betrayal and emotion, but he forgot one thing. I never put all my trust in anyone, without keeping an exit plan for myself. I hit submit on the legal platform, tagging the filing as urgent hearing request within 24 hours. Then I returned to the small bedroom, laid my hand gently on my stomach and whispered, I promise, you won't be born into a world where justice is forgotten. Outside the window, the stars still shone bright, and inside me, a fire burned fiercer than ever. The press conference took place at Stratos Tech's headquarters. Sleek, polished, and cold. Every banner carried the spiral logo I had once designed. Now, everything had been twisted to serve Brandon Cole's agenda, and his newly polished PR team, including Jessica, always a half step behind him like a high-end shadow. I watched from the 18th floor apartment, curled up with a pillow on my lap, one hand instinctively resting on my belly. The morning sickness had eased, but the ache remained. Less physical, more emotional. From watching betrayal broadcast live. Thank you all for coming, Brandon began, his familiar voice tinged with a calculated rasp, just enough to sound sincere. Stratotech has recently undergone some changes in leadership. He paused, casting a look that feigned regret. We're sad to announce that Ava Cole, co-founder and COO, has officially stepped down due to personal and health reasons. The camera panned to Jessica, who nodded solemnly. Brandon continued, his face somber like he'd just lost a family member. Ava contributed greatly in the early stages. However, recent concerns over her emotional stability, especially after discovering serious internal data breaches, led the board to make this difficult decision. I leaned back in my chair, eyes locked on the screen. So they played the emotional instability card, an old trick used to strip women of power under the guise of concern. To protect shareholder interests, the board has appointed Jessica Rhodes, who's quietly led the operations team for months as the new chief operating officer. Jessica stepped up, voice soft like a speech rehearsed 100 times. I know I can't replace Ava, but I believe I can carry on the mission we once shared. Every word was a velvet slap, just sharp enough to sting, leaving no bruise. Just then my phone vibrated. A message from Caroline flashed on the screen, short and razor sharp. Injunction granted. Media will have the notice within 3 minutes. Get ready. I opened a new tab and logged into the Tech News Network, and there it was. An urgent banner crawling across the screen in red. Austin District Court issues temporary injunction against Stratos Tech use of NovaSync. Patent belongs to Ava Grace Morgan. The press room erupted. A reporter stood up, phone raised. Mr. Cole, can you confirm reports that the court has issued an injunction halting the use of NovaSync due to an ownership dispute? Any comment? Brandon faltered, for a second, but long enough for every camera to catch it. I haven't received any official legal notice yet. But Ava Grace Morgan, Ava Cole's legal name, has been confirmed as the registered patent holder since 2016. Does that mean your company has been using the technology without permission? Jessica turned pale, her hand gripping the edge of the podium. Another reporter jumped in. If the core tech is frozen, will the pending Global Core acquisition be affected? There are rumors Global Core is now reevaluating the deal. The air drained from the room. Brandon clutched the mic, voice cracking. We will cooperate with authorities to clarify the situation. Right then the screen behind the stage changed. Someone in the control room, probably Kay, had queued up an old video, me and Brandon, in that garage back in 2016. I was explaining the NovaSync framework and he nodded along, then said the words I'd never forget. "You're a genius, Ava. This algorithm is going to change supply chain management forever." The room went silent. Brandon spun around, pale. I sat watching, calm, and allowed myself a small smile. Another step complete. More battles ahead, but today the world knew I hadn't disappeared. I was reclaiming what was mine. That evening I sat in my tiny kitchen, one hand wrapped around a mug of ginger tea, the other scrolling through legal updates and cybersecurity reports. Every email, every document, another brick in the wall Brandon would never get past. The doorbell rang. I thought it was a delivery, but the security cam showed something that froze me for a beat. Jessica Rhodes. No designer dress, no smug smile, just pale skin, plain clothes, and eyes that darted like she was running from herself. I didn't open the door immediately. I pressed the intercom. "I don't take visitors without an appointment." Her voice cracked with urgency. "Please, Ava, I have no one else to trust. I have something you need. And you're the only one who can help me." I opened the door but didn't invite her in. We stood in the entryway bathed in soft yellow light and quiet tension. "Talk. I don't entertain traitors." Jessica pulled out a flash drive and a folder sealed in a plastic sleeve. "It's a recording of a call between Brandon and a Global Core rep. He's rushing the sale, knowing full well NovaSync isn't theirs." I crossed my arms, eyes locked on her. "And why would I believe you? You said I was only useful until I wasn't." "I was wrong. I thought I was replacing you, but really, I was just a placeholder." Brandon told me after the press conference that he'd drop me the second the deal went through. "Just hold the title to keep investors calm," he said. "So you're here because you got played, not because your conscience kicked in?" She didn't deny it, just nodded, small but firm. "I'm not pretending. But I have proof, and I'm willing to cooperate, as long as you give me a shot not to go down with him." I took the USB but didn't plug it in. "If there's malware on this, you know what'll happen." "I know, and I'm not that stupid." I handed her a pen and a sheet of paper. "Write a cooperation agreement. You'll be monitored by my legal team and can't leave the city while we investigate. If what you brought is real, I'll hold up my end. If it's a trap, you won't get another chance." Jessica signed without hesitation. Her hand trembled after she set the pen down, as if realizing she'd just crossed a line she could never come back from. I called Caroline and said plainly, "Open a new file, codename Iron Veil. Objective: leverage internal cooperation. Witness Jessica Rhodes. Activate surveillance and begin data security checks." After Jessica left, I locked the door, returned to my desk, and inserted the USB into a standalone security check device. Within 2 minutes, the software confirmed, clean. I opened the first audio file. Brandon's voice came through, crystal clear. "We'll transfer the entire platform as long as Global Core agrees not to pursue legal action if Ava sues. I'll handle the rest." A quiet chuckle from the other end of the line. "So the tech was never actually his?" Brandon replied without hesitation. "What does it matter anymore? Once the deal's signed, who's going to care where it came from?" I closed my eyes for a few seconds. Not from shock, but because those words were the final arrow I needed to seal a flawless counterstrike. I opened the next file, a conference room security recording Jessica had extracted before her access was revoked. In the video, Brandon was seen tearing up my employment contract and tossing it into the trash, turning to the head of legal. "Wipe everything tied to Ava, even traces in the source code." I didn't smile, I simply drafted an email to Caroline and the strategic PR team. "Prepare response press conference, send a letter to Global Core, include the audio file, and IP registration. Have our attorney release it within 12 hours. I stood up and walked out to the balcony where the June breeze swept in, cool and sharp against the summer heat. Below, the city lights flickered like the world was watching, waiting for the end of a battle they only half understood. I placed a hand on my belly and whispered, "You're about to see what your mom can do, and I won't back down, not this time." I had just returned from a meeting with the legal team when my phone started buzzing non-stop. 3 missed calls from the bank, 2 alert messages from the insurance portal. and one urgent email from my personal accountant. I opened the email first, and just reading the first line, I knew Brandon had made his move. Your bank accounts have been temporarily frozen due to a legal request from Stratos Tech regarding an asset ownership dispute. Then came the notice from the insurance company. My premium healthcare plan had been terminated effective immediately. Reason: no longer eligible under corporate policy terms. I scoffed, half amused, half disgusted. Still going with the cheap tricks, Brandon? My phone rang again. An unknown number. I answered calmly. This is Ava Morgan. Brandon's voice came through, disturbingly composed. You've been busy. So has my legal team. If you're calling to apologize, it's too late. I'm not calling to apologize. I'm offering you a reasonable choice. I said nothing. He continued. You're pregnant, unemployed, uninsured, and clinging to a couple of old papers and a fuzzy recording. In a few weeks you'll run out of resources. Meanwhile, I'm still in control. I raised an eyebrow, silent. So, here's the deal. Drop the lawsuit, sign a resignation with a confidentiality clause, and you'll receive a severance package generous enough to live comfortably for a few years. In return, you stay silent. The baby gets a stable life, instead of growing up in a mess of public court battles. I gripped the phone tighter, my palm ice cold. You really just used the baby to negotiate with me? Brandon chuckled, softly, like sharing a private joke. No, I'm just stating the facts. You should choose the path with the least damage, for both of you. I ended the call without another word. Immediately I forwarded all bank and insurance alerts to Caroline with one line. Brandon made his move. Accelerate the hearing, trigger emergency protocol. 10 minutes later she called back, her voice low and firm. The court has accepted our request to expand the injunction. I've also submitted an emergency appeal to Judge Everett, citing witness intimidation and financial interference. But most importantly, Ava. He's fast-tracking the shareholder meeting to finalize the sale, within 36 hours. I'm guessing he wants to close before the court limits his authority. Exactly. I'm reaching out to Global Core now to warn them of the legal risks if they proceed with a disputed deal. But if Brandon convinces them you're unstable or lack solid proof, they might take the gamble. I sat in silence for a moment. Then we need something undeniable, a hit so heavy no one dares move. Caroline asked slowly. Can Jessica provide anything else? Yes, but I need to verify it first. I'll meet with her tonight. After the call I opened the file, from Jessica. A video clip from a closed-door meeting, where Brandon instructed the tech team to wipe all records linking me to NovaSync. It got boring. On the screen his voice was crystal clear. Make sure there's not a single line of code left tied to Ava. If there is, erase it. She'll have nothing to fall back on if it's all gone. 1 second later my expression hardened. I knew exactly what to do. I sent the video to Caroline with one message. Began legal violation report. Intentional destruction of evidence. We go all the way. Then I sent an email to the last person on my list of potential allies. Noah Stern, an independent investor who had walked away from Stratos Tech after disagreeing with Brandon's leadership. Subject line: you need to see this, before you back the wrong side again. With every step I wasn't just protecting myself, I was tearing down the wall Brandon built out of power and deception, and I would be the last one standing in the rubble. I stepped out of the car at the executive entrance of Stratos Tech, holding a copy of the court order and a hard drive full of evidence. A rare chill blew through the marble hallway despite the sticky summer heat. Beneath my tailored navy blazer my baby bump was now visible. A living rebuttal to the burden Brandon claimed I was. I didn't try to hide it. Today I wanted everyone to see the truth. A woman once discarded, now returning to claim everything. Noah Stern was waiting by the elevator, nodding at me like a soldier ready for battle. The board's in closed session. Brandon's presenting his final pitch. He thinks he's already won. I gave a faint smile. Then let's wake him up. The elevator opened on the 50th floor right outside the main boardroom where all the directors and Global Core reps were seated around a long wooden table. Through the glass I could see Brandon speaking animatedly. Jessica beside him nodding on cue like she hadn't betrayed him hours ago. When I pushed open the doors every head turned. Brandon froze mid-sentence, color draining from his face. Ava, you don't belong here. I held up the documents, my voice steady. Under the order of the Austin District Court, not only do I belong here, I'm obligated to prevent the unlawful transfer of my intellectual property, specifically the NovaSync algorithm. I stepped to the center, handed the injunction to Chairman Greaves, then turned to GlobalCore's lead counsel. Any transaction executed after this order is considered void and may constitute a federal offense. The air turned thick. Brandon rushed forward, cutting me off. She's making this up. Ava was terminated for mental health issues and misconduct. She's just bitter. I didn't react. I handed the hard drive to Noah Stern, who had agreed to act as a neutral legal observer, and signaled him to play the video. On the screen, Brandon in the data room, issuing commands. Delete all access history linked to Ava. Rename the source files. If the FBI asks, we've got nothing. A wave of whispers rippled across the room. Several board members exchanged glances. GlobalCore's lawyer shot to his feet, whispering urgently to his aide. I turned to Brandon, unflinching. That's your voice. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is evidence tampering, a federal crime. The boardroom doors flew open. 3 men in dark suits stepped in, FBI badges catching the light. Mr. Brandon Cole, the lead agent, spoke. We have a warrant to search your office and seize all materials related to an investigation into securities fraud and intellectual property violations. Brandon stood frozen, forcing a tight smile. This is a misunderstanding. I'll call my lawyer. You should, the agent replied, stepping forward. But first we need your cooperation. As 2 agents approached, Brandon lunged toward Jessica's open laptop, likely to destroy the financial reports still on screen. Don't touch that, I shouted. One agent blocked him and pushed him into a chair. Brandon screamed, face twisted with rage. You're ruining everything. You'll regret this. I stepped closer, voice calm and ice cold. No, Brandon, I'm fixing everything. And the truth never needs an apology. The FBI escorted Brandon out as the stunned board sat in silence. Before the tension could lift, Chairman Greaves spoke. Ava, do you have any additional materials? Yes, I said. And I'm ready to present the full development timeline of NovaSync along with evidence showing Brandon's financial reports were manipulated. Jessica stood still for a beat, then suddenly spoke. I'll share what I know. I glanced at her but said nothing. The game was over, the board had flipped, and this time no one could pretend they didn't know right from wrong. As I walked out of the boardroom, the first light of day filtered through the glass. A new beginning. Not just for me, but for everyone who's ever been crushed under power and control. I touched my belly gently and whispered, I kept my promise, and you'll grow up in a world that knows what justice means. The boardroom hadn't yet recovered from the shock of the FBI escorting Brandon out when I returned to the center of the room. I pulled out a detailed restructuring plan and laid it in front of each board member. This isn't just a proposal, I said, voice calm but resolute. It's a chance for Stratus Tech to begin again, with transparency, integrity, and respect for real intellect. Chairman Greaves was still flipping through the documents when the doors suddenly burst open again. Brandon shoved past the agent beside him, face flushed, eyes wild. You can't take everything from me, he screamed. Holding an open laptop, he charged toward me. Before anyone could react, I barely turned to the side. But not fast enough. The edge of the laptop struck my belly, right where my hands had been instinctively protecting for days. A sharp pain shot through my chest as I dropped to my knees, arms clutching my stomach, my breath caught. Ava! Jessica cried out, rushing to catch me. The remaining agents restrained Brandon, who continued thrashing, shouting without control. She's making all of it up. It's a setup. My vision blurred for a second, but I still heard the rapid beat of the tiny heart inside me, reminding me I couldn't collapse now. I leaned on Jessica to stand, waving off the office nurse's hand reaching for me. I'm fine, I said slowly, steadily. I'm still fine. The room fell silent. Brandon was let out, this time without protest, just a shadow of a man who had lost everything: power, reputation, and even his dignity. I stepped forward again, my voice hoarse from the pain but steel sharp. What you just witnessed was the peak of a toxic pattern that's lasted for years. But this is where it ends. I looked each person in the eye, faces I had once called colleagues. Brandon may be gone, but what he left behind is a broken system and a corporate culture twisted by fear and silence. I placed my hand on the restructuring plan in front of me. Starting today, I propose a full reset of our governance structure. Transparent systems, independent oversight, and above all, respect for people and ideas. Jessica stepped up behind me, speaking with more sincerity than I'd ever heard from her. I've seen the collapse from the inside. If we don't change, Stratus Tech won't survive the next year. Ava has a plan, and I'll stand with her. If the board permits it. A few board members exchanged glances, then Chairman Greaves nodded slowly. I motioned for an immediate vote. I stepped back to my seat, hands still gently on my lower abdomen. The pain had eased, but the cold dampness down my back warned me not to ignore it. The vote was held in silence. Final result: 9 in favor, 1 abstention, 0 opposed. Restructuring plan approved, Greaves announced. Ava Morgan will serve as executive advisor and head of reconstruction until a new board is formed. I bowed my head, whispered a quiet thank you, then turned to Jessica, the woman who once tried to replace me, now standing with me at the most critical moment. As I prepared to leave the room, the corporate medical response doctor approached. Miss Ava, we need to take you to the medical center for a pregnancy checkup. That impact was not minor. I nodded without protest. But first, I turned to the room, looking at every face. I want you all to know, today isn't the ending, it's the beginning. I walked slowly down the aisle of chairs, every step heavy, but filled with pride. The glass doors closed behind me, and I knew. This fight wasn't over, but I had just claimed the most important victory: control over my future and my child's. 3 weeks after Brandon's arrest, his name appeared on the front page of every major business outlet, not as the visionary CEO of the next tech generation he once claimed to be, but under a cold headline: Brandon Cole officially indicted for securities fraud, evidence tampering, and endangerment of a pregnant woman. The preliminary hearing moved quickly. With the mountain of irrefutable evidence from both Jessica and me, his bail was denied. His legal team requested medical treatment in lieu of detention, but Judge Everett gave a slight nod before rejecting it outright. A person who cannot distinguish right from wrong isn't a patient. He's someone who chose wrong, again and again. At the same time, I returned to headquarters, not as a former COO, but as Chief Innovation Officer, a new role the board created to rebuild from the ground up. But the first thing I did wasn't call a meeting. I changed the name. Stratus Tech's, a name once full of ambition, now tainted by manipulation and betrayal, was replaced with something simpler and deeply personal. Gravemind Innovations, a fusion of my former last name, Morgan, and the word gravitas, symbolizing integrity and accountability. We didn't host a flashy rebranding launch, no laser-lit stage, no celebrity performers. Just a quiet gathering with one line on the LED screen. From ashes, something good will grow. I stood before nearly 400 remaining employees, those who chose to stay through the storm, and opened my address. I won't promise to fix everything overnight, but I promise, starting today, no one in this room will ever have to choose between doing their job and doing what's right. We began with practical reforms. First, expanded family and maternity benefits, up to 6 months of leave for both mothers and fathers, with financial support independent from salary. Second, no meetings after 5 p.m. Everyone has a life outside these walls, and we won't pay people to sacrifice their families or mental health. Third, we launched the Pathfinder program, where senior employees guide new hires through their first 90 days, not to supervise but to support. The response was immediate. In just 2 weeks, Gravemind's job portal received nearly 12,000 applications, including from candidates who had previously rejected Stratus Tech because of Brandon's reputation. Jessica, after fully cooperating with the investigation and providing critical evidence, remained with the company as Director of Strategic Development, under independent oversight. I haven't forgiven her, not yet. But I believe people can change when placed in a system built on ethics. She was also the first to suggest the Gravemind Scholarship Fund, providing tuition assistance for tech students affected by natural disasters or family crises. I agreed, on one condition: the first program must be named after my mother, the woman who believed in me when the world turned its back. The day I signed the official approval for the restructuring plan, I was 27 weeks pregnant. The baby stirred every time I sat at the conference table, as if she already knew she'd be born into a world her mother was trying to make just a little better, day by day. I placed my hand on my belly while the 3-year strategic roadmap for Gravemind lit up the screen. "You won't grow up in an empire built on power," I whispered. "You'll grow up in a place that values truth and respects what's right. And if one day you ask me, why didn't you give up when everything was against you? I'll simply smile and say, because I had you, and because justice is always worth fighting for." 3 weeks after Brandon's arrest, his name appeared on the front page of every major business paper. But this time, not with the title, "Brilliant CEO of a New Tech Generation." Instead, the headline was, "Cold and Final. Brandon Cole indicted for securities fraud, evidence tampering, and endangering a pregnant woman." The preliminary hearing came quickly. Thanks to the undeniable evidence from both Jessica and me, Brandon was denied bail. His lawyers requested medical treatment instead of prison time, but Judge Everett merely nodded and rejected it outright. A person who can't tell right from wrong isn't a patient. He's someone who chose wrong repeatedly. At the same time, I returned to company headquarters, not as the former COO, but as the Chief Innovation Officer, a role created by the board to rebuild the company from the ground up. But the first thing I did wasn't call a meeting. It was to change the name. Stratus Tech's, a name once full of ambition but now stained by manipulation and betrayal, was replaced with something simple and personal. Gravemind Innovations. A blend of my old last name, Morgan, and gravitas, the symbol of integrity and responsibility. The launch of the new name wasn't flashy like Brandon's events had been. No laser lights, no celebrity performers. Just an internal gathering, with a single message on the LED screen. "From ashes, something good will grow." I stood before nearly 400 remaining employees, the ones who stayed through the storm, and opened with this. "I won't promise to change everything overnight, but I will promise this. Starting today, no one in this room will ever have to choose between doing their job and doing what's right." We started with the most tangible changes. First, expanded parental and family care policies. Up to 6 months of leave for both mothers and fathers, with a financial stipend fully independent of salary. Second, no more meetings after 5 p.m. Everyone has a life outside this building, and we don't pay people to sacrifice their families or mental well-being. Third, the launch of the Pathfinder program, where veteran employees support new hires during their first 3 months, not to monitor but to guide. The ripple effect was fast. In just 2 weeks, Gravemind's careers page received nearly 12,000 applications, many from people who had previously turned down Stratus Tech, citing Brandon's reputation. Jessica, after cooperating fully and providing key evidence, stayed on as Director of Strategic Development, under independent supervision. I haven't forgiven her, not yet. But I believe people can change when placed inside a system built on ethics. And it was Jessica who first proposed the Gravemind Scholarship Fund, to provide tuition assistance for tech students impacted by natural disasters or family crises. I agreed, with one condition: the first scholarship program had to be named after my mother, the woman who rooted her belief in me when the world walked away. The day I signed the official restructuring approval, I was 27 weeks pregnant. The baby kept moving each time I took my seat in the boardroom, as if she sensed that she'd be born into a world where her mother was trying, bit by bit, to make things right. I placed my hand on my belly again, watching the Gravemind strategy roadmap on the screen. "You won't grow up in a kingdom of power," I said, "but in a place built on values and respect. And if one day you ask, why didn't you give up when everything seemed stacked against you? I'll smile and say, because I had you, and because justice is always worth the fight." On an early autumn morning, with the leaves outside the hospital window turning shades of amber and red, I gripped the bed rails. My breathing came in short bursts, and my tears weren't from fear, but from the overwhelming emotion of everything we had survived. 3 hours later, my daughter cried for the first time, her voice filling the softly lit sterile room. A baby girl, 6 pounds 13 ounces, healthy and pink. "Congratulations, Miss Ava." The nurse wrapped her gently in a soft blanket and placed her in my arms. I looked at her wide eyes, a tiny nose like it had been carved by the gentlest hand of the universe, and the world outside seemed to pause. I leaned down and whispered against her forehead, "Mira Grace Morgan." A name that carries light and the memory of those who always believed I could make it. No one knew Brandon Cole had sent a handwritten letter from prison after the trial. It was only 3 lines. No apology. No excuses. I was wrong. But the biggest mistake wasn't deceiving you, it was thinking you weren't strong enough to rise. I never wrote back, not because I was still angry, but because I had long since moved beyond the place where his words had meaning. Brandon was sentenced to 8 years in prison for multiple charges, permanently banned from holding any executive position. His assets were seized by court order, and as the world slowly forgot his name, I finally felt peace. Meanwhile, Gravemind Innovations, rebuilt from the ashes, had become an industry model. We didn't chase valuations. We built trust. We didn't just change the company's name. We changed how people treated one another at work. Gravemind's new campus, nestled by Clearbrook Lake, was designed as an open space. No private executive offices, no elevated leadership desks. All meetings were transparently recorded, and every employee had a voice in refining processes, from the ground up. Inside, the parents' room had rocking chairs, bassinets, and a corner filled with children's books. An idea born in my 3rd trimester, when Mira would squirm every time I sat through a 3-hour meeting. 3 months after giving birth, I returned, not as a hardened warrior, but as a mother building a world her daughter could be proud of. Jessica, now head of internal relations, walked into my office one Friday afternoon. "Mira's 3 months old today, right? I brought a little something." She handed me a picture frame, a photo of Mira fast asleep, wrapped in a blanket with the new company logo. "We've been joking around," she said. "She's already the future CEO." I laughed. No more tension, no more quiet competition, just people who had chosen to stay, move forward, and grow, together. In December, I appeared in an interview with Techline magazine. The host asked me, "If you could go back in time, would you still choose to join Stratos Tech? Would you still choose to love Brandon? To go through everything you did?" I was quiet for a long moment. Yes, I would still choose it all. Because without those falls, I wouldn't know how strong I could be. And I wouldn't have Mira. That interview ended with a quote that led many people to reach out to me afterward. "Rebirth doesn't happen when you rise alone. It begins the moment you're brave enough to let someone help you up." When Mira turned 1, I brought her to the launch of our new AI research center, the Grace Lab, named in honor of my mother and all the women who quietly laid the ethical foundation of the tech industry. On stage, I didn't give a lofty speech, I simply told a short story. When I was a little girl, my mother once told me, "Justice doesn't always win right away, but it always demands someone brave enough to stand up for it." I held Mira in my arms and lifted her up for everyone to see, as applause echoed and flashbulbs lit the room. This is why I didn't give up, and why I'll never let injustice repeat itself, not for anyone. A chapter had closed. And in that moment I knew, Mira and I, 2 generations, were ready to write the next one, not with power, but with truth and resolve. Ava's story is not just a journey to reclaim justice, it's a symbol of resilience and humanity in a cutthroat business world. From a woman betrayed, fired, and hurt both physically and emotionally, Ava rose again and rebuilt her company on her own values. She didn't just protect the child she carried, she created a workplace rooted in compassion and transparency, inspiring thousands to believe in healing through hardship. What are your thoughts on Ava's journey and how she overcame it all? Share your reflections in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family, justice, and inner strength.